September 21st, 2021. I'm walking around my neighborhood, walking my dogs. Shout out Lucy. Shout out Gracie. I'm near Glendale, underappreciated part of Los Angeles. Controversial statement, maybe. I'm just saying there's more to it than the Galleria. Shout out Sprinkles ATM. I happen to run into a friend of mine, Tori. I tell him I'm burned out on my content. Audiobooks, music, everything in 2021 has got me burned out. So I asked for a recommendation. He tells me about a podcast, and that podcast was called 60 Songs That Explain the 90s. I look it up. I find it on Spotify. I start at the beginning, like any good podcast listener would, and this podcast rules. Binge is the defining media-centric verb of our era, and binge I do. I listen to every episode. I consume it like I was at an all-you-can-eat buffet and I was hungry. Best episode, Mariah Carey, All I Want for Christmas Is You. That episode is awesome. Shout out Isaac Lee. Isaac doesn't get enough airplay. Let's get that guy in every episode. Let's get that guy his own podcast. I'd listen to the Isaac Lee podcast. It would be something I'd consume with the veracity of a hungry man at an all-you-can-eat buffet. Not the best metaphor, but I'm running with it. Do you think this podcast is called 60 Songs That Explain the 90s for any particular sly reason? That is, did they choose the number 60 songs to explain the 90s to make us as listeners subconsciously feel an illicit sexual connection to this decade? If you remove the zeros from 60 and 90, you are left with undoubtedly the sexiest number of all time. Is this the intended subtext? 1989, the movie Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure comes out. There's a scene where Bill and Ted come back in time and talk to themselves outside of a Circle K convenience store that I didn't know was a convenience store until I moved to Southern California, having exclusively bought my chocolate milk and tasty cakes at 7-Eleven and Wawa. In the scene, Bill and Ted meet themselves from the future, in the past, in the present, in the infinite, improbable logistics of time travel. Don't get involved. To convince one another they are who they say they are, they ask, what's your favorite number? To which they reply, 69. Because it's the sexiest number. At that time, I didn't know what that joke meant. I was 11. I asked my older brother. He told me, you'll understand it when you're older. I do now. I think I do. But one thing I know for sure is this podcast is great. Thank you, Tori. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Ringer. You've made something wonderful. And I have eaten it all to the point that I am stuffed, and still I'm going back up for a fresh plate and another round of prime rib, macaroni salad, and Jell-O. And now, without further ado, the end of this video for an audience of nobody. We'll see you next week.